rope ascender used by the U.S. Army.
The Atlas is really similar in a lot of ways to what Batman's using right out of the comic book or the movies. The system is designed to pull a very large load up a rope extremely quickly. It's great for rapid escape, search and rescue, all sorts of things that Batman's actually doing.
The Atlas also lets its user do a controlled descent down the side of a building or a mountain. And its mechanism is relatively simple.
It's a lot like a capstan winch on a sailboat. And the capstan basically gives you a very strong circumferential grip around something round when you apply a load to the rope. To engage the rope, you simply wrap it around that capstan winch mechanism in the device, close the lid, and pull the trigger. To operate it, it's like a portable drill, variable speed trigger. You pull the trigger more, you're going to go up faster.
Built for combat search and rescue and other vertical tactical operations, the Atlas can swiftly lift over 500 pounds. So just like Batman's grappling system, carrying two people isn't a problem.
A fully loaded soldier is always going to weigh at least about 300 pounds. In the infantry, the lightest pack load that men have is about 75 pounds. From there on, it only gets heavier. So we want to be able to accommodate a soldier and a fully loaded pack at all times. Additionally, if you need to use this device for rescue, it makes it so that you can clip yourself and an additional person in and lift them both at the same time. We built more like a truck that's for vertical operations. So this system's rugged, it can be used a lot, it's got very long battery life, and can lift a very high load repeatedly. So this is more of a utilitarian system than what Batman actually has.
Batman's utility belt may be the ultimate in compact crime fighting, but the Caped Crusader doesn't always think small. And Batman tech doesn't get any bigger or cooler than an automobile that's become a pop culture icon.
At least tell me what it looks like. Never mind.
What's that? Oh, the tumbler? Oh, you wouldn't be interested in that.
Since 1941, Batman has cruised the streets of Gotham City in a car that pays flashy tribute to his nocturnal namesake. But whether it's got scalloped fins, a bat's head battering ram, or a jet-propelled engine, the Batmobile may be the most coveted item in all Batman tech.
I think the Batmobile had a major influence on me. I mean, I was fascinated by it. I wanted to drive it. I wanted to see it. And I think it kind of got me into cars at an early age that way.
Artists and writers have kept improving on the Batmobile's design, with additions and overhauls reflecting car trends of the day.
The ever-changing Batmobile. You know, you see a different Batmobile for every year. You see a different Batmobile for every generation. In the 40s, you had the big grille, which was kind of cool.
The first Batmobile I remember was the Batmobile of the 50s with the huge bat fin on the back and the bat-headed battering ram in the front. It was big enough to be a tank. Then he got into the 60s and the car evolved to match the one in the television series with the atomic turbines. Then in the early 70s it became a sports car. I always thought that was the coolest. I mean, the whole idea that this singular unique vehicle belongs to a singular unique character.
So what do you think? Does it come in black?
As Batman's enemies got tougher, so did his car.
Make a color?
It's a black tank.
And no retooling of the Batmobile was more radical than the one showcased in Batman Begins.
Hold on.
Director Christopher Nolan and designer Nathan Crowley set out to create a 21st century ride. One whose practicality and power would help set the tone for the entire film.
The purpose of redesigning the Batmobile, which we call the Tumbler, was to have it have capabilities that we felt a crime fighter would need to have in the modern day.
The Tumbler was the first thing we designed because I felt that if we could show the studio what the Batmobile was in our world, they'd get a handle on what everything else would be.
Action!
I felt that we needed a new contemporary approach in order to believe in the utility of this vehicle. So what I proposed was a cross between a Lamborghini and a Humvee, something that would have the presence of almost a tank-like vehicle, but also with the speed and grace of a sports car.
She was built as a bridging vehicle. During combat, 2 of these would jump over a river towing cables.
So by definition, it needed to have a jet engine in it to allow it to jump over rivers or whatever in order to take the equipment across. It needed to have armor to protect it from taking hits. Also has the ability to drive in a stealth mode with an engine that's incredibly quiet, so it can sort of disappear into the environment.
I lost him. We lost visual.
It's a pretty cool piece of equipment.
The Tumbler seems surprisingly realistic, but how much of it would actually work? Let's start with the aerodynamics. In spite of its weight of about 5,000 pounds, the Tumbler can achieve impressive speed.
The Tumbler is a big, bulky, tank-like machine, but probably can go about 120, 130 miles an hour.
Credit goes to its surprisingly sleek design. Just as airplane flaps generate lift to make a plane go up, the Tumbler uses flaps to push the vehicle down and achieve greater velocity.
The theory behind it is that it's got all these little aerofoils on the outside that all make tiny little wings, instead of having one big as an aircraft.
The other key aerodynamic element, surprisingly, is the airflow under the car. And this is actually what racing cars use. If you can design that air under the car to go significantly faster than the air on the top of the car, you get low pressure under the car, and the high pressure on top pushes you down on the ground. So if you want to understand how the Tumbler gains stability by having the air blow underneath it, you can just take a piece of paper. You can generate high pressure on top and a low pressure underneath by blowing under the paper, and the paper will be forced down.
Speed is one thing, but how does something as large as the Tumbler manage to maneuver so well?
Weight does have a great effect on maneuverability. You have all this mass you have to move around. It's transmitted through the wheels and tires to the road. Really got to hand it to the designers, automotive-wise. It's quite a feat of engineering. They seem to have each wheel is kind of balanced out by itself without an axle running across the middle.
Both wheels are totally independent, so one wheel can actually stop, and the other wheel can rotate, so the thing turns right on a dime. And it can do that at any speed. That's what's so amazing about it.
I gotta get me one of those.
The Tumbler is designed to get some of its momentum from a jet-powered engine. Another detail rooted in reality. Jet-powered cars have been used to set land speed records, and they've even made brief trips into the consumer world.
They've tried to use jet engines in cars throughout history. 1963, Chrysler introduced the turbine car. 50 models they made had a jet engine in it. They only gave them to about 200 customers for 3 months each. It was a very experimental program. Most people who drove it loved it. Unfortunately, the car wasn't great on gas mileage. It's a very complicated car, and it kind of died a few years later.
Over here on the throttle, flip that open and throttle up. This will boost you into a rampless jump. Right now!
On screen, the Tumbler can also make unassisted or rampless jumps.
If it comes off perfectly parallel to the ground, it's always going to fall a little bit. And so if it's jumping to something that's a little bit lower, it's okay. If it wants to jump to something at the same height or higher, it needs some form of lift, or it needs to come off at a slight angle. The way you could do this is imagine a little bit of a wheelie as you take off. You don't actually need a ramp to get a little bit of vertical velocity, especially since you've got the jet engine on the back to give you that extra thrust. You just get the front end of the car up a little bit, fire your jet engine, and now you're going off at an angle.
You know, we were confident that we could do some pretty amazing jumps and it land and drive off, you know, not the classic thing where you,